when you can't make a living wage by working full time and you can't even stay up on your expenses or on your bills, you can be a productive member of a company. You can even be a productive member of society.
Okay, welcome back to the Facilicast, folks. The Liberal Science of Buildings. It's Jim Zerbel, your host. I am so pleased and honored to have Adrian Danila, the founder of Multi-Site Family Consultant, Facility Consulting, and he is here to talk to us about his career and what he's doing in the facility management space. Adrian, welcome aboard.
Jim, thanks for the invite. I'm excited to be here with you today.
I'm honored that you're with us. And why don't we begin by you just sharing a little bit about yourself and about what you're doing in this space?
Yeah, so back in 2003, I came to the United States. I came from Romania. So my first task was to secure a full-time job with benefits. $10 an hour was my target. So it took me several months, right? I needed to learn the language. I needed to gain some work history here, right? You know, when someone is new to the country, zero like relevant history or any history for that matter, could be hard. About 6-7 months in, a friend of mine told me to try for a groundskeeper position at Georgia Tech. He was working at Georgia Tech. So I went ahead and I applied for the position. Nothing came out of that, but the groundskeeper word stuck with me. So I went back to the job boards that were existing at the time and kept applying for groundskeeper jobs. About 2-3 months in, I got a phone call from an apartment community. There was a smaller apartment community. They hired a part-time groundskeeper. They interviewed me. They're hiring me. So this is how my journey in multifamily started in September of 2003. When I was about 6 months into my part-time job, I was living at a different apartment community. And one morning when I was going to work, the gentleman that was being the groundskeeper at my community where I was living was not at work. He was typically a very early riser, like 6:30. I leave the community at 7:30-ish, and he's not there. So I came back and I told my wife, probably the gentleman that, this groundskeeper here is not working here anymore. I'm going to go and ask the manager for his job. So she said, you're crazy. People could take, time off. They could get sick. Things could happen to people. Like, he just missed a day. So the next day I went to work. He wasn't there again. And when I returned from work, I stopped by the leasing office. I asked the property manager, they had an opening. Sure enough, they had one, a full-time groundskeeper/punch. And I interviewed, they gave me the opportunity. Moved my way up to like a punch technician service manager. And then in 2007, I became a regional management director for the first time. I've been in several regional positions since, up to vice president of facilities. And I had in my oversight up to 32,000 apartment homes. That's kind of my history in multifamily.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Okay. All right. So how about telling us something unique about yourself?
Something that probably not too many people know is that in my previous life, I am a law school graduate. So I graduated law school in Romania. I actually passed the bar exam. I never practiced as an attorney, but I could if I was to go back to Romania because I have the certificate, right? I passed the exam. So that's probably one of the things that is not very well known by many.
Got it. One of the things I like to ask our hosts, our guests here, is what's your why? Are there particular things or a particular thing that inspires you in the industry that we're in to do what you do?
Typically, things that are bigger than my immediate needs, right? The need for making an income, a certain level of income, the need for having a certain title, things that go beyond that, because those are things that are lasting, things that are impacting others other than just me. So being that I had a very, successful career in this field, I'm now very focused on paying it forward. And I try to help others, help them guide them and help them become successful and be the help that I wish was there when I was growing up in this industry, and it wasn't maybe always out there.
Yeah, I could agree with you there. So many things that we wish had existed way back before. And with that in mind, there are a lot of changes that the built environment is experiencing on so many different levels. Maybe you could talk about some of those key changes that you've personally observed in the past and even more specifically in 2023 and 2024. You want to talk about some of those ideas?
Absolutely. So I think the two main trends that I'm seeing developing, and I think that we will see this year and beyond 2024, are centralization and technology, the way technology impacts the industry. So let's just start with centralization. I think that the industry now is currently in love with this term, with centralization. They're trying to find different ways to do things for various reasons, right? Running things more efficiently and also trying to overcome the challenge of not having enough personnel, qualified personnel. So they're trying to find different ways in which they could manage and run properties. And centralization is one of them. Centralization is a tricky thing when it comes to apartment maintenance. I think the main thing that most managers or people at the very top are missing in this thinking is that this is a business that's already scaled. In other words, we're not a door-to-door, a property here, a property there. There's massive number of apartment homes in a confined space, 200, 300, 3,000 apartment homes. So the business model, the way we run those things, it's a model that's already being scaled, right? So what we're trying now to do is to super scale this and say, we're trying to do this to 5,000 and to 10,000. And I think in certain cases, in particular cases, it's possible. I don't think that centralization will be a thing in an industry as a whole, right? It could be done in pockets and it could be done where it makes sense. For example, properties that are in a vicinity with each other. So then the people are servicing a number of properties, ideally don't have to drive too long if they need to drive in between two properties in one day. Now, if you have the opportunity to schedule people in such a way that they don't have to cover more than one property in one day, that's ideal. For those of us that have been in the industry for a minute and that know what happened due to challenges and last minute emergencies, it's a difficult task to accomplish. So that's the centralization part. The technology part is we've been doing things manually for a very long time. Even when the technology started to develop solutions for workflow management, they were still very basic for years. How to open a service request, how to close a service request, how to manage a make-ready, a vacant apartment. But in all this process, I think what we were missing were the KPIs. For example, let's just take, Jimmy. He's a service technician at, Arbor Trees Apartments. And we want to see how Jimmy does from a performance standpoint. Is Jimmy a good worker? So typically the way the conversation is, okay, do we get complaints about him? Okay, we're not hearing many complaints. Actually, a couple of residents said some nice things about him. Okay, Jimmy deserves a raise. But are we actually looking at how much weight Jimmy pulls, right? Are we looking beyond that? Things that, could be subjective, right? What are the numbers? What are the KPIs? Well, the great news is that, now there are companies, they're managing workflow. And, am I allowed to mention names here?
Sure.
So one of the companies that I learned that, does very granular data, right, available, makes it available, it's AppWork. It's an amazing piece of technology that actually could tell you, right, if we're going back to Jimmy, how many service requests does Jimmy complete in a day, in a week, in a month? What's the average completion time? What's the average time Jimmy spends on completing work orders in a day? So you see how much time out of the 8 hours in a day he actually spends on work. Another great thing that they do is that they have data integrity. In other words, typical software, right? It's built in such a way to where you will print out service requests, hand them to various technicians. They come back to a person in the office, which could be a leasing agent or a system manager or manager, which goes ahead and completes the service request in the system. Well, this technology, this particular AppWork, does not allow anyone else to affect a technician data. In other words, the technician is the only one that could actually cross those service requests. This way you have data integrity, right? So there's some amazing stuff that's happening out there. I'm actually excited about this. I'm excited about people actually trying centralization because I'm super curious. in finding which are the ways in which we could actually implement centralization. Because centralization as a whole, I think I'm speaking with facilities experts and leaders all the time. It's not something quite accomplishable, right? But if we take bits and pieces, they're definitely possible. There are great things happening out there.
Okay, so what I heard there was that we're seeing scaled complexes and scaled holdings becoming ever more scaled. And let me ask you, just to be clear about that, the benefits of macro scaling, are they incremental or are they really significant outcomes? Or does that outcome, is a more significant outcome afforded by macro scaling and then combining that macro scale with the adoption of a new technology to afford it? Can you talk about that?
I think the jury is still out on this. I don't think we have enough data to support this either way, right?
Okay.
We're still in the infancy stages of centralization. There are not enough data points for us to look and say, like, we tried this and really work, and at which scale. Because people often make a general statement saying, yes, centralization does work. And then when you actually ask the specific questions, okay, so how many apartment homes are we talking about? And they will say 200 or 300. I'm in an institutional space, right? 200 and 300 is one property. That's really nothing. Like it's completely irrelevant. So we're talking about, in order for this to be considered at scale, you had to be talking about several thousand units, probably like no less than 2 or 3 or 5,000. And not to say that there's not a benefit into doing things to run things more efficient, like for 1,000 units or for 500. They are, but I wouldn't really call them centralization.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's talk about the ongoing discussion this year in particular and the tail end of last year about artificial intelligence. How and what implications do you think that will have on the multifamily space? Tell us about that.
So on a multifamily space in general, I think it is, and it's going to have a huge impact in the most beneficial ways. I'm hearing people criticizing AI, saying that AI is going to take away jobs. This is an age-old debate. Ever since the start of the Industrial Revolution, we had people that were afraid that the steam engines will take jobs away from people. Well, the reality is some of the jobs were eliminated, but so many other jobs were created. Fast forward to 2024, here's what I think about AI. I think that, AI is not actually a threat. It's an enhancement tool. And then it's not about people losing jobs because of the AI. It's people losing jobs because they're not savvy in using AI as a tool. That's why they will be losing jobs. They will become obsolete because of that, because they're not embracing the technology, thinking that we could still run things the whole way. It's not the technology itself that actually pushes people out of jobs.
I appreciate that very much. And when we're talking about jobs, also let's delve down the portal of training and maintenance training for new and existing technical staff in the facility management space in the multifamily arena. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, and we have some questions for you as well.
Definitely. So I'm just gonna paint the picture of what we have currently. So most companies, to my knowledge, have a system of training that's web-based. In other words, in order for a technician or a service manager to get training, to get access to training, they have to sit down in front of a computer and take the training. The challenge that we have is that we don't have computers designated to maintenance. So in other words, you would ask your employees to take certain trainings, and there's not a physical device that they could use to take the training. So that in itself is a huge challenge to overcome. Where do I see training going? Like, training will have to become mobile. If you are a training company, a company that sells learning and training, and you do not have an app on a phone, sooner than later, you're going to become obsolete. The industry changes. There are new companies that are entering the space. They do have the apps. They have a system to where it's learning on demand. What do I mean by that? HVAC class that typically will take maybe 2 or 3 hours or 5 hours to complete. It's broken down in 10 to 15 minute segments. And then you could take each segment at a time And then at the end of the segment, you will take a quiz, and this will be an accomplishment that's checked for you. So instead having to set up 2 or 3 hours, to block at a time, you could take 10, 15, 20-minute increments and complete that in time, more than just, like one sitting. So also hands-on training. Hands-on training is still gonna be out there. A lot of us in the facilities field in maintenance, in multifamily, learn hands-on, me included, right? If it wasn't for people that actually taught me, that show me how to fix things, I wouldn't be where I am today. Of course, I did get exposed to like class type of knowledge. That's also important. But also you have to combine that with, with a hands-on, seeing it and actually doing it yourself. And I think a lot of us in the industry, in the maintenance field, learn this way just by doing it, the practical way.
I often think about catch as catch can, where one needs to learn something at the moment that one needs to perform something. Have you seen the advent of platforms out there that are providing the training and the what I would call live coaching toward a particular task at hand, such as maybe you've got an HVAC unit of a particular type or style that's gone out and you need to service this. You've not yet worked on one of these, or maybe don't have the experience with that particular one, but the particulars about that particular unit exist and can be conveyed. Are there platforms in the multifamily space that are doing that yet?
So I say, not to my knowledge. I do know that there are products that are being developed as we speak to be model number specific, product specific, like not just HVAC in general, but carrier model so XZY134 unit to show you how to troubleshoot that particular or whatever refrigerator model. I know that those things are in works. And by the way they are being built, it's with built-in AI, artificial intelligence. In other words, the technician could speak to an app, and the app could, guide them through based on, their questions and the answers, the back and forth conversation. The app could guide them through using AI to narrow down the diagnostic for that particular issue that they're trying to troubleshoot. So I know there's technology in work. To my knowledge, I haven't seen something that's developed enough to be ready to use today, that specific, that granular for particular models, for particular instances.
Yeah, in the commercial built environment, of course, we've got BIM, building information modeling, and I could wax about this for a second. That building information modeling is great. It's got all the data and all the information about all the things that are in all the building. The problem is, in the past at least, you used to have a rocket scientist that would run it, and no one but the rocket scientist could ever understand. You'd have to ask the rocket scientist to deliver the goods from the BIM model, Revit, and of course AutoCAD, its brethren. Almost 10 years ago, actually, we started seeing something that I used to refer to as Pocket BIM, where it is a platform that's tapping the BIM model, but it's not holding it all on your phone, right? It's just a web portal to it that has some particular functionality. And there are a number of these platforms in the commercial class A building kind of space. And but we also see and we observe these new training regimes that are coming out that are great video-based trainings that sometimes they'll tap YouTube, of course, but in most instances they're proprietary to themselves. I see this merging together, which will certainly help going forward. You need to know the information when you need to know the information. You can take it 6 months ahead and be qualified and maybe get a certificate for it, but it is the moment of impact that you need to solve for the broken fan motor on this particular HVAC unit, that we see the need for something related to Pocket BIM with video and AI coalescing together and answering the specific question: why won't the threads on this particular jet fit? Those sorts of things. It'll be an interesting thing to watch happen. So with that in mind, we've been talking about training people. Where are all the people that are coming into this career coming from? And is there a unified path?
That's a great question right there, Jim. I think we're all asking this question very very often lately. And where are they coming from? I could tell you where they should be coming from. Right? They should be coming from high schools. We're talking about a young men and women. College is not a career for them. Right? I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of. College shouldn't be for everyone. Right? And for those that the college is not a career for, I think trades and particularly multifamily maintenance could be a very fulfilling career. I go back to my personal, story. I came to the country knowing nothing about maintenance, not even speaking language, and I was able to move all the way up to a vice president of facilities and 32,000 units under my supervision.
Crazy number.
That's pretty good in my book. I will also say that if I was capable of doing it, I'm not a special. I don't consider myself any special in any way. If I was able to do it, this is a very viable path for others as well, right? So we need to go to high schools. We need to go and talk to these kids when they're in like 10th grade. Don't wait until they're ready to graduate. Have those conversations, get in front of them and explain to them that this could be a real career. Follow up and try to get them, convince them to give this industry a shot. This is our chance. There's other categories that I would tap into, like military personnel that's about to return to the civilian life. They have technical skills. They have the discipline that they learn in a military environment. So they have a lot of what it takes to become successful and just learn the trades. They just need the industry specific training. Right, so they're not really starting from scratch. I'm really big on women. I like to see more ladies in our industry, right? Even though this is a heavily man-represented industry, I've seen like amazing female co-workers in our field that have done a great job. I think we could bring more of that, right?
Yeah.
And I think it'll be a very beneficial thing for everybody, for them, for our industry as well.
Yeah, the women are always smarter. There's no question about that. With that, thanks for talking with us about that. Let's talk for a second about economics. So, how are salaries looking, and are salaries growing in the facilities maintenance and management space in the multi-site arena? Tell us about that and salaries and where they're going to go.
That's an amazing question. That's a super important question, right? So let's talk about context a little bit. For the past 3 to 5 years, the middle class has been devastated by the effects of inflation. And in all reality, people use government issued numbers. I actually think they're lying. They're not telling the entire truth. When you go to the store and certain things cost 30, 40, 60% more than they used to 2 years ago, and your government tells you that, there's 7% inflation, like that's simple math. That could not be, the math does not add, right? So the numbers are cooked. The real inflation is like way higher, the numbers, than what's being presented officially. And the middle class and lower middle class are the classes that are the most affected. They are devastated. Our maintenance personnel, it's typically in those classes, in the lower middle class. So they are the ones that are like some of the most affected people, if you want, at large. Going back to your original question, yes, I do market research every time. I occasionally speak at local apartment associations. One of the presentations, one of the things that I'm presenting, it's something about the labor shortages. It's a presentation, how do we overcome? Part of my presentation is to show the audience, how do we fare against everybody else? Because whether we want it or not, it's not like back in the day when you were thinking, okay, we have to compete with a property down the street from us. If we're paying just about what they're paying or a little more, problem is solved. Today, the situation is, if you're saying that your mindset is that, I want you to realize that they have the same pain that you do. So by trying to match or like be a little bit over what they're paying, it's you copying a failing model and expecting for your model to work, which is the definition of insanity. First of all. Second of all, consider the gig economy, which is real, right? It's not necessary in terms of dollars, but it's in terms of freedom. Let's just say that, John does, Uber Eats or Uber driving. He's an Uber driver or Lyft driver. and John needs $300 a day in order to make a living to cover bills. That's his number, right? John could flip the switch on, go, give people rights up until he reached the $300 number. When he reaches that, he flips the switch back off and he goes back home. John doesn't have a boss. Nobody to tell him when he needs to work. John could come up, he could wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. If he has insomnia, drink a coffee and go out there and make money. Nobody tells John. He could work weekends. He could take an entire month off if he wants to. There's no boss to tell him. This is a very hard to compete in, and it's a real thing. I'm traveling a lot. I talk a lot with Uber drivers, and I could tell you that a very, very few actually expressed to me that they have any intention of going back to be a full-time employee. Actually, I don't remember any, even some that, didn't find like Uber being very lucrative lately. They still are not planning on, like, they'll do whatever it takes not to go back and be a full-time employee anymore. Those people that get a taste of the gig economy, we're not seeing them back. They're not going to be in a pool of candidates for us. So we have that. And we also have remote work. I'm actually currently hiring remote from different parts of the world. Like I'm open to even, overseas. So there are people living thousands of miles away from where I live that are going to be doing work from home for me, making a decent living for the standards of living to where they're located currently. Never have to leave home. This is not applying just to overseas. It applies to here too. There's so many people work. So when we're thinking about this is the entire picture, you compete physically with everybody that's like within a 30, 40 mile radius from where your physical building is, and with everybody else in a world that has an online position advertised. And our rates, you ask me about salaries specifically, we are, in my opinion, somewhere around 25 to 30% less than comparable industries, trades like, HVAC tech, specialized electricians, plumbers. We are about 25 to 30% less than those industries. So very challenging.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the industry continues to, as you say, do sort of the same model as you had suggested. Yeah, it might be a place to do some innovation. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Adrian, for coming on with us today. Why don't you tell us, where can our listeners find you?
I'm in many places, Jim, but thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to start by saying multifamilyxconsulting.com, multifamilyxconsulting.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, a lot on LinkedIn, Adrian C. middle initial, Danila, Adrian C. Danila on LinkedIn. Connect with me, send me a connection request. And we also have YouTube channels. I'm the host of 3 different podcasts, Multifamily Chronicles, the Multifamily Hangout, and Multifamily X. So if you just type up any of those 3 names, you will find my content there. You will find my contact information. And for those of you that want to reach out to me via phone, my cell phone number is 678-469-7708.
7708. Very good. Adrian Danila from Multifamily X Consulting. And we're really appreciative of you coming on to our cast today. And welcome back from the Facilcast, the Liberal Science of Buildings. It's Jim Zerbel. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for the invite, Jim. I appreciate the opportunity.
Splendid.